Alright, this is the second part of building a cabinet for the guest room. I thought I'd be able to finish it up in two parts, but it just started getting too long, so I'm going to break it into a third part also. So, if you saw the first part, you saw I had the carcass put together and started gluing up pieces for the drawers. And this now I'm just going back and doing a final cut to size on the drawer pieces. So it's just, you have to just kind of make sure you get everything cut perfect for the slides to work right in the end. So I got the two drawer sides and the front and the back cut. Now I'm just using the dados for the corners like I normally do on most of the jobs. It's the easiest way to make drawers for me. So I'm just put the dado blade on and I'm cutting the grooves for locking it together. And also, now I'm just going back and cutting the groove around the bottom of it for the plywood base that goes in the drawer. And you can see it's only I only cut like a 5/16 groove there, so I'm going to have to step the saw to get the right width for the bottom. The bottom plywood that I'm using here is actually 0.47 thick, so I think they call it 12 millimeters or something like that. So. And I have to just step the saw and do two cuts to get a perfect fit, because you really can't put the dado blade together. And there it is. I got the grooves right, and now it's time to go back and just cut the panel. Now that I get my final measurements for it, after cutting the grooves. And same thing is just, originally I cut the sheet in half so it would make it easier to handle, and I'm just cutting the pieces off. And you can see how that plastic piece I put on the front of the table, so it really does help a lot with the miter gauge when you have to cut pieces that are a little bit wider. So as always, before I do the final glue up, I'm just going to do a quick assembly, and it kind of shows you how it goes together. The front and the back lock into the sides like that, and the drawer just goes in those grooves here. And now it's time just to make sure that I got the dimensions right and check the final fit, which actually it came out perfect. Then I went back and took it apart, and all the pieces that face inside can't be sanded later too easily to get a good sanding job done on them. So I'm going to go through and just clean all those pieces up good with some like 150 grit paper here, just to so I don't have to worry later about it. And now this is time to just start to glue up. And I know you've seen a lot of glue ups before, and this is just another similar one. I use this Titebond 3 and just apply it to both sides of all mating surfaces here. And that little glue brush that I use, the silicone brush, that I really love these things, because you just use them and then you let them dry for a day, and the next day you just pop the glue right out of them and they're ready to go again. So it's really, they cost a couple dollars up front, but in the long run, they really are a great saving, money-saving device. So I start just kind of putting everything together there. And this actually was too big for that glue-up table that I had made. I'm going to make a bigger one someday to make it easier to square everything up when you get into bigger parts. But this one I just decided to do with a couple of the bar clamps here. And it doesn't really take a lot of force, because all the joints are cut really precision to make sure that comes out square. And then just check it with the square and let it sit for, I think I'll let it sit for about an hour and a half here, and then it's all done and ready to start sanding on it. And there it is, a real quick drawer now. I can't fit this on my other belt sander, so I'm going to use the hand one. You can see I've got that small hose kit on it, and one thing I can say is that hose is kind of a pain in the neck to use. It has a lot of vacuum on it and sucks itself back and tries to pull the tool back. With the sander, luckily the sander is pulling you forward, but with the this little oscillating sander here, I've completely quit using it because it's just too much of a fight. So I'm going to look for another hose for the kit. The adapters actually fit perfect and work good. So now I'm just doing the final sanding on the drawer here, trying to get everything. And there's that hose. You can see how it actually tries to pull itself back naturally, and then you add vacuum to that, and it will actually pull a tool right off the table when you turn the vacuum on with a small orbital sander. So I'm just going to look for another hose for that. And now it's time to go on and do 2 coats of this polyacrylic on it. I'm kind of doing things as I go along here. I could have done it all and done it in the end, but it's easiest for me to, just go slow and do one area at a time. And then a good sanding between it, because the polyacrylic really raises the grain on this ash with the first coat. And you need a good mechanical bond for the next coat. So I just give it a good sanding and throw a second coat on it, and that will be good for the drawer. And now it's time to put the removable section of the slides on, and you can see I cut a couple blocks here to space it off the bottom so both sides would be, perfectly parallel with the bottom in the proper position, so I shouldn't have any problems later. But still, I'm just gonna drill a front and rear hole and put 2 screws in on each side, and mount one slide on each side, and then just go back and give it a quick try out to make sure everything's in the right place before I put all the rest of the hardware in. Now you can see this is the grains running a long way there, so I don't really have to worry about shrinkage or expansion or contraction, so the screws don't really matter where I put them. So I got it in there, and you can see it just really everything fit perfect. Nice smooth slide, and everything's square and stuff, so I can just pull that out and put the rest of the screws in the slides. And there you see I put 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and 1 in the middle. I don't know how much weight will be in this drawer, but I figure these 5 little screws should be able to, on each side, should be able to hold anything. So pretty much your drawer is all done now. It's time to move on to the next shelf that's going to pull out. So I'm just cutting the wood starting to cut it to size and rip it to width. And I could have really pretty much done these at the same time as the drawer pieces, but I decided to make these a little bit different size and a little different technique. I wanted to have it so that you would not see any end grain in the front because there's no front panel going on the shelf. So what I actually had to do is make the sides a little bit longer and then do an undercut to hide the grooves for the bottom and the actual end grain on the front. I got all the pieces for the front, back, and the 2 sides pretty much cut to length first. And there you can see there's the 4 pieces. Pretty simple construction. And now I've got this old Delta jig for cutting tenions and stuff like that, so I'm going to get everything good and squared up and set up on that. And actually I run a couple test pieces first to get the grooves to the right depth. See, that groove's got to be the exact depth of the material for the side so that there's no overlap, so it overlaps in the front. So once I get my dimensions all correct, I'm just going to go back and cut the 2 ends of each, the front and the back, standing up like this. And you can see this jig really does make it easy to repeat cuts for items like this. Now you just flip it over and make sure that you're, down tight on the table and tighten that up good, and then you don't have to worry about your hands or anything else. But pretty much, little jigs like this really do help you get a perfect job in the end. Those ends all cut like that. Now I have to go back and undercut where the sides go in. So you can see I've put a piece of board on that Craig miter gauge and got some stops on there. And, this provides a repeatable stop, as you can see. Plus that backing board helps the grain from tearing out when you're cutting across the grain like this with the dado blade. So there's kind of what the joint on the front and the back look like, and then the 2 sides will just lock right in there, just like that, and you can see how nice everything fits together. Real simple to make joints, and just a little twist from the first one that I did so you don't see the end grain. And then it's time to go back and actually cut the groove for the bottom to fit into. And Same thing here. I'm using that same almost half-inch plywood so I have to do two passes and shift the fence a little bit just to get a perfect fit. And this one is just the same construction as all those kitchen shelves that I built for pulling out. And then it's back to just cut another slice off the sheet of plywood. Now I made sure that this piece of plywood for the shelf bottom was going to be the perfect size to fit, because there's so little glue joint area on this shelf that I'm going to rely on the plywood to actually help keep everything square and keep it from coming apart later. So you want to make sure you get a real good precision cuts and fit on the bottom insert here. Now with everything cut, I did a quick test fit of all the parts first, and then I went back and actually started sanding the insides of them all like I did on the other drawer. And again, it's just because you really can't get in there and sand them good later, so get all the planer imperfections and stuff off of them while you really can. It doesn't take much. It's just it's not really deep imperfections or anything, but it helps to do it now. And this is a glue up of the shelf here now. You can see I'm doing the corners here, but on this one I'm actually applying a little bit of glue to that groove where the bottom goes in, because as I said before, I'm just going to rely on that for a little bit of extra strength on this little shelf, just because I don't know what's going to go on it, or how hard it's going to get hit or pushed or anything else. So the same thing, that little silicone brush really comes in handy, and make sure to coat all the joints really good, any of the mating surfaces on both surfaces, and then everything just slides right together. And again, this one wouldn't fit on that clamp up board that I've got, so I'm just going to use some clamps on it here. And this one I'm going to put clamps in both directions because I want to pull those front faces tight too. So with everything all pulled together tight and stuff, now I'm just going to check the square again and make sure that's perfect on there, and just let the glue dry for an hour, and there's what the corner joints actually look like. An hour later, I'm going to go over this belt sander, and I just love this sander. I can draw a line on there about a 64th from the edge and just go back and clean it right down to that line slowly, and just an amazing piece of equipment. I definitely recommend one of these in your shop if you're doing any kind of work like this. And it runs just so smooth, and it's so easy to control, so it does do a good job. I'm very happy with it. So I got the drawer edges all cleaned up here now, and this is all down to the final dimension that I checked, and just do a quick test fit before I go on, and it fits perfect. So now it's time to just put some radiuses on all the edges on this. It's going to be kind of, a chance it'll be bumped into, or the handling, you don't want to grab a sharp edge and stuff like that, so breaking the edge really does help the finish last longer. And this is just a little 1/8" radius round over bit that I'm using. I went around all the front edges there, and then I actually went back and I went around all the top inside edges too, just to break everything a little. It doesn't take that long, and it's a little simpler than sanding it. And then back for the final sanding now. The sanding table really does help keep the sawdust down. And that little DeWalt sander, I really like that. It's a lot more comfortable to use than my old Porter Cable one was. So now I'm just going to go back and put one coat on of this polyacrylic, and then sand it good to get down to raised grain, and give it a good bond for the second coat, and then a second coat, and I'm done. Now, same thing, putting the slides on here. I've got a board that's the exact thickness of, the dimension I needed from the top there. so everything's in line, and I'm gonna start again here by just putting 2 screws in. So if I have to do any adjustments later, I can, but you know, before I get all the screws in, I'm gonna make sure everything really works nice and smooth and no binding or anything like that. I just got them mounted 2 on each side and just gonna slip it in place and try it out. And there we go. And actually everything's perfectly in line, works smoothly, so go back, put the rest of the screws in. Now for the pull-out work surface, I've got some pieces of ash slabs I've had laying around. These are about 2.5 inches thick, and you know, I've had them laying in my shop for a couple of years now, trying to figure out what to do with them. And it's gonna make a bench if I decided to just use them up on this pull-out work surface for this, because I've got a ton more where they came from. So you can see it's kind of a struggle to cut with a DeWalt saw, but I got it cut, and this is going to go right under the edge here on that other 3rd set of slides that I put in. And now it's time to start flattening them down, and you can see I kind of cut through the pith with when I sawed this lumber, so that's up there on the top side. You can see how it's got a real good warp in the piece. So I'm flattening the other face side to be the face of my surface here, and then I'm going to go back and plane geez, almost 3/4 of an inch off of this. Now the other wider piece wouldn't fit on my joiner, so I got out, this is that flattening jig that I made a couple months ago, and there's a video about making it back other ways if you have any interest. But it's a real simple way to get a perfect flat surface if you don't have a big enough joiner for boards like this. So I'm just taking about 1/4 of an inch off now, and you can see the router handles this real easy. Does a real good job, and it's, you know, simple to do, and just index it and cut it, and there it is. Got a little bit of a ripple surface, but that'll all be planed off later. You really don't feel it, and there's that 2-inch white side bit that I've been using, and that does a wonderful job. No tear out, gives it a really clean cut. So I'm happy with that, and as you can see, it's just I just screwed a slab down in the box here, and a couple pieces of wood and some wood shingles to shim it up so it's you know, in the correct location before you start. And then it's time to start planing them down to thickness. Now in the end, I'm going to be taking almost 3/4 of an inch off of the thickness of it. I was going to resaw it off, but it's really not good lumber for anything because it's through the pith on both pieces of them. So I'm just going to turn it into wood chips for use out in the garden. So with this planer, you do have to be careful because you can only take a 1/16 at a time off, so it's going to take a lot of passes. But it's the easiest way right now. And it is definitely quite heavy. You can it's going to be a nice solid work surface when it's done. So I'm just going to run this through until I get it down to, I'm actually going down to about 2 inches now, and once I get things cleaned up a little better and squared up, I'll do the final thicknessing on it. And you can see this Grizzly growler. I actually did take that hose off, and I got those 2 fittings taped over it, and I took the bag out there to you know, try and seal it up better, and I'm still getting dust through with those couple passes, so you know, something in there that's just not quite right. So there's the that's how it's going to glue up, and so now here we are, about 2-inch thick pieces of ash. You can see that Amana 40-tooth Premier blade that I love is just cuts through that like butter and gives you a glue line rip when you're done, and that definitely was, you know, one of the best blades that I've ever bought in my life, and I've really had good luck with it. And the same thing here. Here's another piece, trying to just clean off the edge, but the first cut there I didn't get a real good job, so I'm just going to go back, take another 1/16 of an inch off of it, and that thickness of the blade, you get no flex or anything. You just get a perfect cut every time that, you know, and here it is, just kind of a glue line rip. So now it's time to start marking out. I'm going to use some biscuits to line up these two pieces. I was going to do 2 rows of biscuits at first. I thought about it because of the thickness of it, but then I decided to just go with 3 biscuits in the middle because there's just so much area for glue to hold it together. I just want them for alignment and really not going to worry about them for strength. So I got the biscuit slots cut there, and now it's time to go back and do a little bit of gluing up. And this does take a little bit extra glue here. So again, that silicone brush comes in handy, and then the biscuits just give you like a perfect alignment every time. So they're really, something I'd recommend using if you do any kind of glue ups. Gotta get my clamps on and put a couple spacers there to keep the glue from hitting the top side, and check it for flatness, and everything's perfect. And just go back and scrape off some of the extra glue here, and just take a damp paper towel, wipe it off, and then flip it over and do the same thing. Now it's too wide to cut on my table saw and too heavy to work with a miter gauge, so I decided to clamp a board on there and follow a guide. And right about there, if you listen to the saw, you can hear it bogging down a little bit, and actually you can see the blades kind of deflecting a little bit there. I cut through the middle of a big knot that was in there, and I didn't get a perfect cut on that side. So I flipped it around, I cut the other side. This time I left an extra 1/16 of an inch on it so I could go back and clean up around that knot. So this side, had nothing in the way, so I did a really perfect cut on this side with no problem. And that 20-volt saw really does have some good power to it. It pretty much amazes me. So there's that side, perfect cut. And just go back and take the pencil marks off with the sander there quickly. And this is, I'm going back, you can see that knot there. I just clamped the board on the bottom and set it a 16th back that I had left on there, and I'm just going back with a router bit with a ball bearing and cleaning that up. And now in that pull-out desktop, I decided to put some pockets in there that I could throw some pencils and supplies and stuff, just in case anybody needs anything while they're working. And I couldn't fit the that slab on my router, a little bit big, so I decided to do it with some templates. And here I'm just cutting the template for doing the final routing on it. And I could have made this by hand, but I just decided I wanted to watch the router do all the work. So I just drew it up and programmed it and just let the router run. And a couple minutes later, I've got a perfect template for doing my final cutouts. Now it's just a piece of 1/2 inch MDF, and I have it double-sided taped down to another piece of 1/2 inch. It's kind of like a wasteboard under there. So these things, just pop right out with the double-sided tape when you're done, and there it is, pretty much my pattern for doing the cutouts. This way they'll all come out perfect. So I put a brass guide bushing on the router, and I got a nice 1/2 inch straight bit that I had, and I'm just going to go back and follow this template here and just cut the pockets. Now I luckily I had a long bit because I'm cutting these about 1.5 inches deep. So I had to go back and just do it 1/4 inch at a time in passes, and it took a while, and kind of had to go back and vacuum the chips out so you could ride the guide tight against the template every once in a while. And it was just a just slow process, but wasn't that hard. And there you can see I just have to do a final pass around the outside to clean that up. And back, same thing with the 3 holes that I'm putting in there. I put some paper clips or rubber bands and stuff like that in the holes, and just do a little 1/4 inch and then drop it, and back over. I had to move the template over to do the last one. You can see I didn't have a big enough piece to make one template, and just pop it off when you're done, and there it is. And I decided I wanted just some round overs, or just some, break the edges around the openings here. So got that little DeWalt router out again with the 1/8 inch radius bit, and I'm just going to clean them up like that. And now for the bottom, I'm going to put a finger pull under there for pulling it in and out. And so what I'm doing is I just took that template and clamped it half off the edge on the bottom side. And I'm doing the same thing, just going to use a router and just cut out a pocket in there. Now these slides have to be perfect, the location of them. So I clamped on some boards and clamped them in place really good and tight just to make sure that they were the exact location, because there's only a 1/16 of an inch clearance at the top of it. And I want to make sure that I maintain that very evenly. So I'm just going to start by putting these slides on with 2 screws, and you can see I'm using the slotted screws on this application because the back ones can be fixed, but the front have to be backed off a 1/4 of a turn so that they'll float, because this slab is going to move, I'd say, 1/8 of an inch over the seasonal changes. And then it's time to just try it out and make sure everything's right and fits in there. And everything, it really does look good. And first time you got to give it a little bit of a push for the ball bearings to get back in. And then there you can see it's really, everything's nice and smooth and solid too. So, and there's a stool I put out there just to show you. This is the exact perfect height for working if you got a laptop or want to do a little bit of work while you're in our house. It's it'll be nice there. And you can see pretty much that big pile of wood that I started out with down to a couple scraps, so I had to go out and grab a couple more pieces from my pole barn to finish up the rest of it. And moisture content's up a little bit, so I can't finish right now anyway. I have to prepare this wood and then put it up by the wood stove for a couple weeks, and so that's when I'll be finishing up the last video with the drawer fronts and the actual bottom doors. Pretty much you can see where I stand, and got top drawer, that center workstation, and the bottom pull out there. And actually my wife now is looking at it. She wants me to build something similar for her craft, so that's a good thing. But so this is just kind of the second part of it, and like I said, I'll be finishing. It's going to take probably another week or two until I get everything dry enough to finish it all up. And in the end, it looks like this cabinet is going to be probably close to 300 pounds when it's all done. And a quick update on the lettuce. You can see it's it's still growing, and I'm still picking it. I picked a bunch the other day. You can see the romaines actually got nice heads now that we've been eating. And the leaf lettuce is, the dark leaf lettuce there is really nice and really tasty. And just the green leaf lettuce there is really nice, really crispy and fluffy taste. And so I'm just harvesting a little bit more here for lunch today. You can see just how beautiful it is. Those LED lights really did do a nice job this year. So there's today's lunch, and then we're going to be cooking a pot roast tonight. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.